Welcome to All Things Moore County, Moore County's weekly radio show highlighting the many facets of the Sandhills. That includes real estate, lifestyle, community and neighborhoods. And now, from 4 Properties, here's your host, Bill Sahadi.
Good morning and welcome to the talk show, All Things Moore County. We have a lot to unwrap today. We've had many shows in the past where we've featured nonprofit organizations in Moore County. I think to date there are in excess of 800 of them. Every one of them has a right to be. You could make an argument that drug-free Moore County is one of the most important agencies that Moore County has. And the reason being is they don't have the publicity, the positive vibes perhaps that go out, that people sort of, there's sometimes a social stigma about drug addiction, and yet there's a problem in Moore County, there's a problem everywhere. And the guests today are going to be discussing, not only giving their personal testimonials, but talking about the process of what recovery looks like, discovering, I guess the process of discovery where you're meeting people that need the services that you offer. And I'm going to very briefly just introduce everyone around the table before I speak with Taylor Moy, who is a licensed clinical social worker at First Health. To my immediate left is Dr. Sheree Dupree-Smith. She's a former principal and teacher, school counselor, and she's a current executive director of Drug Free Moore County. Good morning.
Good morning.
And thanks for getting this show organized.
Thank you so much for having us.
To your left is Bob Martin, who is a retired Monticello, New York member of the police staff in Monticello.
Yes, sir.
How long have you been down in Moore County?
I am actually in Rock Hill, South Carolina.
Oh.
I work in Moore County.
Okay.
Our not-for-profit sees patients in every county in North Carolina, and Moore is one of our target areas.
Okay. You have a personal story to tell as well, which we want to get to today.
Thank you. I do. I've been sober since February 1991, and my own addiction got me into the field of working in substance abuse services. I'm a lawyer by education. I was admitted in New York, and when I moved down here, for 17 years, I was the director of substance abuse services for Atrium Healthcare.
Wow. So you are on the other side of it.
Yes.
For sure. And
yes.
Your story I'm sure will resonate today with a lot of people. To your left, Katie Stroud, you're a peer support specialist. You live in the Pinehurst area.
I do. Mm-hmm.
And peer support specialist to me means you are a coach.
So you could say that.
A mentor?
Yes. Well, good morning, everybody.
Yeah.
Basically, I would define a peer support specialist as someone who can help those struggling with addiction to integrate back into society.
Right.
We provide them with resources for treatment, rehabilitation facilities, counseling, coaching could be one of them, like a life coach type thing.
Yes.
But my goal is to save lives and to help those that have struggled as I have in the past to get on the right path.
As you have.
As I have. Yes, I've been sober now for 3 years and about 4 months.
There's something about getting to the other side of addiction that
beautiful.
Creates an ability to want to lead and to set yourself up as an example.
Yes.
Because people then can visualize what it looks like on the other side.
That's right.
That's a valuable asset that you have.
Thank you. Very much so.
Yeah. To your left is Eddie Hammett. Eddie, you're a retired drug enforcement agent and the executive director of, and you're going to pronounce this for me.
StartBupe.
StartBupe. Tell me what that is.
In Charlotte. We're a telehealth MAT program based out of Charlotte, and We cover all 100 counties in the state of North Carolina. North Carolina is a really large state, and we pride ourselves in because of the lack of treatment in so many counties, more on the list, and we can service anybody through our telehealth program through medication-assisted treatment.
So it's a medication to treat the addiction.
Correct.
So it's one medicine to treat an opioid addiction?
Yeah, it's a buprenorphine, naloxone combination drug. Commonly on the street, people know it is Suboxone. There are other brands of it, but we use Suboxone and combine that with mental health and counseling and self-awareness, you name it. We try to do it all, and if we don't have it, we find somebody who can do it. So
the term rock bottom, people they have to get to rock bottom before they step forward, and rock bottom looks. I'm asking it as a question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not making it as a statement.
Right.
But when people hit rock bottom, that's when they are looking for help.
Yeah.
That's a terrible term in my personal opinion.
Okay.
Because there's so many people that feel that their loved one can't get treatment until they hit rock bottom.
Oh, I see.
The problem with the opioid epidemic is rock bottom is death. Mm. And with so much fentanyl in North Carolina and in Moore County,
mm-hmm.
that rock bottom can be you've overdosed, there was no one around with Narcan to revive you, and you've died. And one of the greatest myths about rock bottom is that a person is not ready for treatment until they hit that. Well, everyone's rock bottom is different.
Yes.
And I was in an AA meeting listening to two people discuss. One was a school teacher, and she had received a minor traffic ticket. She did not blow the breathalyzer enough to get arrested for DWI. It was during the day. She was highly embarrassed. There was no publicity at all in any newspaper or television.
Uh-huh.
And she was mortified that she was an alcoholic.
Right.
There was a gentleman that was homeless. He had graduated from UNC Charlotte, magna cum laude, with a psychology degree. He was eating pizza out of dumpsters, and he wasn't sure if he had hit bottom.
Mm.
And he had been in and out of the rooms, in and out of treatment. And here's two different rock bottoms. I love pizza. I don't want to eat it out of a dumpster. And he was more positive about his current situation than the school teacher who hadn't really lost anything. Her job was not in jeopardy.
I see.
She had a traffic ticket, and they thought she was intoxicated, but she didn't come up to the level of legal intoxication.
Right.
If she had exchanged places with the person that was homeless,
right,
I'm sure she would have killed herself.
We have a guest with us virtually, Taylor Moy. Did I pronounce your name correctly? You're a licensed clinical social worker at First Health here in Pinehurst, and we appreciate you coming on to join us as well. You can hear this conversation that we're having about rock bottom, and tell me about your work. Who do you see, and at what stage do you see them when they come in to see you?
So my name's Taylor Boy, and I am in recovery also. And my recovery journey began after my second child went into foster care. So I want to. I'm a real person with real problems, and I've been to prison too, all as a result of my addiction. So as part of my recovery, I was able to go back to school and create a purpose for my journey. And the people that I see here at First Health I do see the mental health people, and oftentimes the mental health and substance abuse are co-occurring. I see people at all stages. Some people that are just getting concerned. I have a patient with advanced stage liver that's on the transplant list. just thinking humorously that I collect rocks, and I had like 4 rock bottoms. So, and every time I was willing to do anything to get better, and then my brain changed and said, "You've got this."
Right.
So I think that's kind of what the brain disease of addiction, how it takes over and misguides us in distorted perception and distorted thinking.
What Bob was saying is that you don't have to hit rock bottom to be able to step forward, right? Rock bottom is not the litmus test that advances you to the next stage of counseling, is it?
That's right. That's right. And so I can think back about people who got their first DUI, and that was the sign. He used a similar, or your first public intoxication ticket, or, some kind of consequences even at home. I have teenagers that are looking at their alcohol or drug use. And like he said, the difficulty with the term is that rock bottom often mean death, and it's different for each person,
right?
I guess depending on their situation and their pain tolerance.
On the way to rock bottom, though, there's a lot of denial, isn't there?
Absolutely. There's a river of denial
right.
and addiction, and it seems never ending. And it's just your brain is justifying, rationalizing why it's okay, or that you're going to do this one last time and things are going to be different. And it's a false fallacy that we can continue to feed ourselves day after day to feed addiction.
Right. How long have you been practicing at First Health?
For 4.5 years. I've worked 3 years in the detox inpatient detox psych unit here for Self-More Regional, and then I've been an outpatient for 3 years.
Okay, so I have a question for you, and I have a question for some of our panelists. Mm-hmm. Does your work in this field help reinforce and discipline you to remain on the straight and narrow? I see a no, I see a yes. Taylor?
And I'm going to say yes, but it does not replace my need for my recovery support groups.
Okay, so even after the addiction is kicked physically, there's still a psychological aspect that needs to be catered to on a scheduled basis.
Yes.
And I agree with that as well.
You do?
Yeah.
Kate?
For me, being in a place now where I can help others is a place I never thought I would be, so that does help. Like, giving it away does help me stay sober. But I, like Taylor, I also have to do what is good for me, like talk to my sponsor and go to AA and do those types of things and have a relationship with my higher power. But the ultimate goal, I think, for all of us is to end up being able to help the next person. And like Taylor, I'm also, I'm a peer support specialist, but I'm in school to get my master's in clinical mental health counseling. So I'm, going to go down that path as well, which I'm very excited about. But I'll have to remember while I'm doing that to focus on myself as well. I got to take care of Katie. So
under drug enforcement, it isn't just opioid addiction; it's alcohol. Mm-hmm. Because you've all mentioned AA a couple of times. So I mean that's one of the things that you treat as well.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
I want to say something about the rock bottom thing is
Eddie.
Because I've come from the other side of the fence from an enforcement perspective and over to the treatment side. Thanks to Bob. Bob brought me in to our company, and I'm on a 2-year contract. I've been here 5 years, and I love what we do. But my biggest takeaway is I'm kind of funny about the rock bottom thing too. To me, it's important just meeting people where they're at,
wherever they are.
And these ladies know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. You've got to meet the person where they're at that time.
When do they get to the? When do they stop denying and then say, "I got it.
Right.
I'm."
And you got to meet it. You got to meet them there, and that's when the journey starts.
That's when the journey starts.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
The hard part about denial.
We have 1 minute, but go ahead. I don't want to cut you off at all.
A patient told me the definition of denial, and it was the best, better than I'd ever heard from a professor in college.
Okay.
DENIAL is don't even know I am lying to myself.
Right.
And it's a symptom of the illness.
That's great. You don't even know you're lying to yourself.
Yep.
We see that in drug-related and non-drug-related with people. They have habits they just can block, and they can believe whatever they want to believe. We're going to come back. There's so much to unwrap. We're talking all about the drug enforcement, drug-free Moore County, and Taylor, we appreciate you joining us virtually. I know it's your lunch hour, but appreciate you being here. Thank you. This is All Things Moore County. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our second set of All Things Moore County. We're talking all about drug-free Moore County. They're a nonprofit organization providing information, education, and resources on prevention, treatment, and recovery in Moore County. We want to talk about dependence, the nature of dependence, where it starts, how it blossoms. We want to talk this set about the upcoming event, which is on Sunday, September 25th, Voices for Recovery Gala, which I understand a few of you will be speaking at. But there's another side to this as well. I can't make this up. I just got an email from Kayla Besh, who does our social media work. And I told her I was going to be coming on the show with you all today to talk about drug-free Moore County. I want to read an email to you that she wrote. I was driving my kids home from school, and a car was driving recklessly down Saunders, swerving, speeding, slowing down, stopping. I could tell something was wrong with the driver. They began to drive into the oncoming traffic. I honked repeatedly, and they eventually pulled over. I pulled in front of them to delay and to get a better look at the situation. That's when I saw the driver passed out with a cigarette hanging out of their mouth. The passenger was scrambling and looked panicked. Since I had my children with me, I pulled further down the road to continue watching safely and proceeded to call 911. In a few minutes, they were on their way again, heading towards Aberdeen. I knew that on most days you could find an Aberdeen officer hiding in the Bethesda area, so I headed that way with them while still on the phone with 911. The moment they saw the cop sitting at the cemetery, they took a hard turn into my neighborhood, coincidentally. I proceeded to the cop and informed him of what was happening. Both the driver and passenger were highly impaired on drugs and had warrants out for their arrest, not to mention drugs and paraphernalia in the vehicle. Citizen watchdog, so to speak.
Wow.
Sounds typical, or these are how some people get to realize they've a rock bottom? Is this how they realize that
Absolutely.
they're not in denial anymore?
You know, for me, I feel like I did hit rock bottom, and I was in a head-on car crash, and I was very impaired. And luckily I didn't hurt anybody too bad, but I almost died.
Oh, my
I had to be
goodness.
airlifted to Atrium Health, actually, in Charlotte, where I had very bad internal injuries. But it wasn't until then that I came to in the hospital and actually surrendered and said, oh, my God, I'm sick. Like, I have a problem. So for me, it took that, you know, that scare where I'd lost everything. I thought I'd lost the support of my parents. I'd lost, you know, my husband. Pretty much, I mean, I'd spent my last dollar, you know. So that was my rock bottom. But I know I survived for a reason, and I think this is now my purpose.
So that's how you got to that point
That's
where you
how I
needed
got
help.
to that point. So that's not unusual.
And
How long were you in before then? How long were you in active abuse?
Oh, 20 years.
Wow.
And the story, the letter I just wrote, is another way of people getting found out and maybe being helped and saved. We don't know what happened to them, but Kayla would just happen to be there, and she's got very strong instincts, and she's an initiator, not a reactor, and she initiated. for sure. You probably have heard stories like that.
They're
They're all different.
So many people that have gotten successful recovery in their lives from being involved in the criminal justice program, from being forced to go because they're on probation or parole,
right,
or from work, or family influence, where a family member has very strong boundaries. And the problem that people that have substance use disorders have is they're frequently in relationships with people who don't have strong boundaries. But when you have a relationship with someone that has strong boundaries, or the family has gotten counseling and has gotten boundaries, that person is forced to go to treatment because they have no other alternative. And it works initially, and eventually recovery catches up to them, and it goes from external motivation to internal motivation. I worked with a person at behavioral health, and their daughter had overdosed twice in their home. She had done CPR on her daughter, and the last overdose, she called 911. Her daughter was on the living room floor. She was blue. She was crying, doing CPR on her daughter, calling 911. The ambulance was in her development on a phony call. So when she hung up the phone, the ambulance started. They were dispatched immediately, and they got there and they saved her daughter. And it was one of those things where you're looking, is God really looking out for me? What are the chances that the ambulance will be a mile away from my home when my daughter needs help?
Right.
And the daughter's been sober for 4 years.
For people who are listening to this show, who perhaps their parents, who have kids that they suspect are going off the rails a little bit, and they don't know where to reach out for help, are there any common denominators that you can talk about that would predispose somebody to being dependent, to have a dependence?
Yeah. Definitely.
Sheree?
Yes.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be here. There are actually some signs and indicators that you can tell if someone's suffering from active use, is what we like to use. For example, the person may not be able to be coherent in conversations, or you may notice a rapid speech or slurred speech. The person may come from a family of neglect or been exposed to things at a premature age. A lot of people that struggle with addiction also have low self-esteem. They're helpers by nature. They look out to help other people as a source of inspiration and motivation, and they sometimes say to themselves, because I'm helping someone else, I don't have to deal with myself. So they're they're very selfless, and I've grown to know these people to be some of the best leaders, in the sense that they're highly intelligent. And watching them, especially when you look at our younger generation and those that are struggling with addiction now, a lot of them lack opportunity, they lack resources, and they're very creative, but there's not a lot of creative outlets for them to pursue. So for parents, caretakers, persons of faith, boys and girls clubs out there, organizations, if you notice a lost child, if you notice that, I believe in it takes a village, so if you're out there and you see just one child, I don't care if it looks like their family has it all together, I don't care if it looks like that child shouldn't have a reason to. Sometimes all it takes is just sitting down and having that one conversation to keep that young person from going down the road to addiction. And I also like to add too, there is a number, the Sand Hill Center and of other stakeholders in North Carolina and across the world have created 988. Instead, if you have, for example, the incident that the young lady found, she called 911, which is appropriate.
Right.
911 is also appropriate if someone's actively overdosing. They have the Good Samaritan law that says that if someone is overdosing, they cannot be arrested. Instead, they can seek treatment for their need. But then there's also 988, that a person that's suffering with mental health disorders or opioid or substance use disorders, you can call 988 and they will be connected to resources in their locale that can better support and sustain them.
Okay. Katie, you were talking a little bit about how you about your dependence and where you were. And Bob, we really didn't get a chance to touch much on your story, but if you could give us a Cliff Notes version of your story, that would be great.
Trauma is the gateway drug. Clinicians believe that childhood trauma and other trauma are the gateway drug, and I'm the poster child for that. I've had instances of trauma in my childhood and in my adult life. I am PTSD from things that I saw in the fire service and in the police department.
Right.
And I did not deal with it well. And I didn't receive counseling because, it was the 70s and the 80s. Mm-hmm. And I self-medicated with alcohol and drugs for my trauma. Mm-hmm. And I left the police department because of PTSD, but I became a lawyer. And so it looked like a great thing because I'd gone to law school. I passed the bar in New York.
Right.
But I was having trouble with suicidal thoughts. And thank God I didn't go through with those. But that was my focus, to get rid of those thoughts and to get medicated for mental issues of depression and post-traumatic stress disorder by using alcohol and drugs. And I ended up in rehab and lost my law license because of my addiction. And that was a great thing because I struggled with staying sober. My family was behind me. And after I was sober for almost 3 years, someone suggested, hey, don't you have a degree in community and human services and counseling? And I went, why, yes, I do. And I started working in the substance abuse field. And I never went back to law. I've been in the field since 1993.
Wow.
And I love it. But I'm an addict every day. I still go to meetings. I still have to work on what's wrong with me before I can work on how I can help you. And it's like being a diabetic. It's a chronic illness that you must address every day of your life.
Right. And the thing that neither one of you have mentioned, but obviously you are displaying, is a tremendous amount of discipline. Without discipline, I would imagine that everything just... I'm sure you've seen people who didn't have that strength and discipline, and guess what? They wound up back in the same place they were, even though they reached out.
Yes, and the discipline, when I think about the discipline, it's basically surrender.
Yeah.
Like if someone hasn't surrendered, that they need help, that they have a problem, that, they may be going down the wrong path. If they hadn't surrendered and they're not willing, then it's really hard to help someone. So if I could box up like the surrender I felt and give it to somebody else, to help them, God, I would love to be able to do that. But so
comes from a good heart.
Yeah.
We have to cut and come back in the third set. We're talking about drug-free Moore County, and let's get to the event coming up on September 25th. Want to know who will be speaking there at the Fair Barn, I believe, and keep people aware that there's an agency like this in Moore County to help people who are in need or who believe they may be in need. This is All Things Moore County. Welcome back to our final set of All Things Moore County. We're having a very interesting conversation with 4 very interesting people, all about drug-free Moore County, some of the inspirations that got you to this table. You have an event coming up on the 25th of September, which is a Sunday from 1 to 5, and that is at the Fair Barn, and it's called the Voices for Recovery Gala. Eddie, you're going to be speaking?
Yes, I am.
Bob, you're going to be speaking?
Yes, sir.
Katie?
I am not. I'll be there.
Okay.
And I will be a voice for recovery. But
and Sheree?
Taylor is going to speak.
Taylor will,
yes.
who was with us virtually.
Yeah.
Are you going to be talking about your stories? I mean, you came from an enforcement background. Mm-hmm. You didn't have an issue with any sort of dependence at all.
No.
So you've seen the world differently than they have.
From the other side of the fence, as
yes.
we call it. Yes.
Yeah.
So, and Bob and I talked about it when it got me involved in this, and I understand, I get it. I've seen the worst of the worst, and not to mention the violence and death and everything else, and so I have an interesting perspective. I think Bob said institutional knowledge of the whole thing, and what drives it, and but I've learned a lot on the other side of the fence too about understanding, offering people hope and accountability and motivation like our program does, and being a tool in somebody's kid. Katie and I talked at nauseam about finding something that works for that person, meet them where they're at, and that's kind of what we do at our company, and having we're doing a lot of partnerships with many counties here in North Carolina, trying to just get us in the toolkit. Hey, this might work for me, this might not. So. But and it's been a pretty incredible journey. People ask me all the time, "Are you in recovery?" I'm not, and sometimes people think I don't understand it, but I really do. So and having Bob have another staff members in recovery, and have resources like Katie, and having the person who's actually in recovery is a tremendous doctor. I see you shaking it. Tremendous asset to have somebody who's actually lives it, because I feel I can ask Bob anything about it, and he'll tell me. I'm sure if I called Katie and asked her something, she'd probably tell me too. So
you and your office taught me when you were with the DEA and I was with the hospital system. You all coined the phrase, "We can't arrest our way out of the opioid epidemic."
Absolutely correct.
Right.
And I've worked a lot of cases. My last 12 years here in North Carolina, I worked all over the state, and that's all I did was opiates. I'm can testify in federal court. I'm kind of a specialist when it comes to it, and know it, see it, and lived it. And and we're not going to ever. You can't arrest your way out of a problem. I mean, counselors will tell you there's times when it's time for somebody to go to jail. But my whole thing is we just have a lot of broken people, and we got to fix people. And the law enforcement side of it too. Sheriff, whatever you are, public safety is your job. My job as a DEA agent was responsible for the safety of this country, and I was a U.S. agent. The sheriff of Moore County, his responsibility is the safety of his county, and we're not going to ever arrest. You can't arrest your way out of this. There's just no way.
I bet your radar is laser sharp. I bet you can smell from 100 yards a situation that meets the criteria where you can anticipate there could be a dependence issue, a drug issue, right? Absolutely. It's almost like second nature.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you live it. I mean, and I just didn't live the opiates. I lived heroin, PCP. I started in law enforcement in '87 when, crack was it. And this opiate thing is different from anything this country's ever experienced. I told somebody the other day, if every person that was addicted to opiate put their sword down and said, "I need help," we would be overrun like the Alamo. We wouldn't know what to do with them. Mm-hmm. And I see Dr. Moore shaking her head. We wouldn't know what to do. We wouldn't have any place for them. And that's a problem because a lot of people just like to maybe kick the can down the road and don't want to address it.
Right. And people sometimes want to hide their head and not face that there's an issue. There are certain agencies that have a social nicety or ring to them, and others that people go, "Oh, I'm glad it's there, but don't tell me, don't show me."
Right. Exactly.
This particular event is also going to be a fundraiser. You're a nonprofit. You've got to raise monies, and there's a $25 donation that you ask for anybody that comes. So are you hoping to attract people who are in recovery, who need the discipline, or are you hoping to attract people who maybe think they have a problem, or parents who think a family member has a problem? Who are you trying to attract, Sheree?
All of them.
All of them.
Yes, we definitely, and I just feel like we have so much to gain from everyone on the panel.
Right.
Eddie, I still feel has more into him. He's humble, but still he's lived through a lot, and for him to come forth like this and do this kind of work, it's rare, and so that's law enforcement. So politicians, we want you there. Law enforcement, we want you there. Our neighbors, our community, we want everybody at the table, and we want you at the table so that we can bring awareness, so that we can lower the stakes, so that we can take the stigma away, that we can be humane, and that we can deal with the issues. And as Eddie said, we can help fix people. They're broken, and if they know that it's okay to ask for help, you don't have to be ashamed. It shouldn't be better to have cancer than to have an addiction. It shouldn't be better that you've been molested and been raped your whole life and now you're out here looking for healing through a drug than it is for any other ailment. And that is why we're doing what we're doing.
I spoke to Bob just before the show, Bob, and I was telling you about a surgical procedure that I had I had to have another one within 6 weeks. So I coined the term that it had failed because I had to go back and do another one. And you took that to an analogy that I'd like you to share, because I think it speaks a lot about the issues of public relations that you have.
You were proud to tell two complete strangers, Eddie and myself, that you had had surgery to your hand, and that the first one failed, and that the second one you were very hopeful that it would be successful. And I thought about so many people that it has taken them multiple attempts to get sobriety into their life, and how much stigma, guilt, and shame there is. They would never come into a room full of people and go, hey, I relapsed the other day, but I'm going to give it another try. Yeah. There's just so much guilt about doing that.
This is more socially acceptable, and that is not.
And when we go to church, they pray for people that have the flu, COVID, a heart attack, but they never pray for people that their son just had an overdose. That's in hush.
Right.
It's not, and we need to get it out of the shadows. We need to abolish, to get rid of the stigma, so we can truly address this as a disease and give people hope that there is help from agencies that they can get sober.
How do you galvanize people? Because you can't do this on your own. You need law enforcement. You need the agency that we're talking about today. You need, like Sheree said, a village of different politicians. Everyone has to be behind this to make it. Because you said if everybody came forward who had an opiate issue, you would know what to do. You'd be over.
We wouldn't have anywhere for them.
So you don't have any support or any help from the tangential agencies that you need help from. I mean,
there's not enough of us,
and
that's a problem. It's not enough in this state. North Carolina has 100 counties. I'm originally from South Carolina, and I first got here. I didn't realize how big North Carolina was. 100 counties, and 30% of them, 40% maybe have providers or helper, and in the medication assisted treatment program side, there's not enough, and we go out. That's how we met the ladies here at Moore. We're reaching out to the counties that are underserved. They were looking for an MAT program when we came along, so I think it was fate. But it was not enough of us. There's not enough people. More that kind of thing.
When Karen Wicker was on in 2018, I remember we talked a lot, because I've seen a difference with insurance companies today with doctor shopping. I've seen it he's smiling, and there's a reason. I've seen that it seems to be working. You go to, because people would go doctor shop, and they can't do that anymore with the refills that are limited, and you have all this paperwork to sign.
It's a felony in North Carolina.
It's
also.
a what?
It's a felony in North Carolina. So
that's a good reason too.
I'm going to plug a book.
Okay.
It's called Dreamland.
Okay.
By Sam Quiones. It's Dreamland, a true tale of America's opiate epidemic. He has another one called The Least of Us, which is about meth and fentanyl. The cartels moved in when the DEA and other law enforcement removed the pill mills. The cartels came in and filled the void, and they made black tar heroin very inexpensive and very readily available everywhere. And at one point, Charlotte was number 3 in the nation for black tar heroin.
Oh, wow.
They've done the same with fentanyl. It's cheaper. It's more prolific. It's easier to bring it into the country from China to Mexico to us, to your neighborhood. And it's increased the numbers of overdose deaths because of the toxicity of fentanyl. And we have a population of people that need care. And the biggest problem that we face in this country is barriers to treatment and access to care.
Right. Right.
Yes.
And that translates into money, too. The Fair Barn is going to host the Voices for Recovery event on the 25th of September at the Fair Barn from 1 to 5. I understand Elliot's is catering it. Maxie's Grill will be there. And there is a Run for Recovery on the 29th of October in Carthage. So you guys are trying to get the word out. As we get to closing, one observation that I have to make, in particular, Katie, to you and Bob, is that the method of sharing information with other people is like the oil for the motor. If you say something out loud and you share it, it holds you to a higher standard. It helps you with your discipline, and that's true in a lot of different vocations and such. But you're both doing a great job of it. You share, you keep it out there in the forefront. You hold yourself accountable in front of others, and then you become a role model. And that's, if you can influence 1 or 2 or 3 people, that's a huge start.
That's right. Yeah,
And
Thank you.
yeah, Eddie, you could be on TV, and if I were the producer and director, I would cast you as a detective, or law enforcement. You have your character is so consistent with your demeanor and your personality, and you're a good speaker.
Thank you. Thank you for having me too. So it's real important, and
Yeah.
And I told my dad I was going to do this, and my dad said, he said, I knew you'd find a job to keep helping people.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You keep paying it forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've come full circle in that regard.
Yeah.
And Sheree, thank you for organizing this. And if people want to reach out, if they want to make a phone call and get some additional information, how do they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So if you're looking for Drug Free Moore County, you can find us on Facebook and all social media platforms. We also have a website at www.drugfreemore.org. Our office phone number is 910-722-2265. And you can also reach us mobilely at 910-835-7006.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheree. Thank you very much. Bob, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Sheree, thank you. You have a wonderful organization, and I'm so glad we met.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Katie.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Eddie, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
See you. I'm going to see
Pleasure.
you on Netflix.
I hear you. Thank you.
This is All Things Moore County. Have a great week.